What's up, everybody? Welcome to my channel. In case you've never been here before, my name is Gabriel Fast. I am the wannabe critic, and today what we're going to be doing is my first retro review. Now, I don't know if retro is probably the right word, but it seems like it's probably the catchiest thing to do. What we're going to be doing is talking about albums that are several years old. The earliest I would probably do is records that are 2 years old or something like that. But I'm just now starting my YouTube, and there's a lot that I've missed out on that I've wanted to talk about that I just wasn't able to just because I didn't have a YouTube at the time. I will let you know I do have a podcast. Maybe I can get that linked in here somewhere. We talk about nerdy things, talk about video games. There's lots of Star Wars stuff in there. But check us out. It's called Geekly Bi-Weekly. It'd also mean the world to me if you would slap like and subscribe and hit the bell if you want to see more of my videos. It'd mean the world to me. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Is there something that you would like me to listen to and review from yesteryear? I would be more than happy to do that and give my thoughts on that and kind of talk to you about what you think about it. So please, like, comment, subscribe. I really appreciate it. Today what we're talking about is one of my favorite albums of all time. Whenever I'm trying to get the feels, this is one of the albums that I go to. Tell you a little story. 5th grade, walking home from school with my Walkman. Some of you may not even know what a Walkman is. It was actually my mom's Walkman. I had an album by My Chemical Romance that I listened to all the time. I can visually see myself sitting at my babysitter's house. It was really weird. I actually lived right across the street from my babysitter, but I couldn't go home because there was nobody home. So I literally would just go on the front porch of my babysitter's house and literally just look at my house while I listened to music. Sad boy. One of the albums I listened to on repeat, I only had like 2 or 3 CDs that were really mine, but one of those albums was 3 Cheers for Sweet Revenge by My Chemical Romance. And that's what I want to talk about today. A band that's been incredibly influential on me ever since I was a little kid. You might be thinking to yourself, why was a 5th grader listening to My Chemical Romance? It's just what I was into. I remember seeing the Helena video whenever I was little and just being captivated by how theatrical it was, and the music was really, really good. And that song is still, that song is timeless. It's amazing. It's an amazing album, in my opinion. So let's kind of dive into it. This is the sophomore album from My Chemical Romance, and their first album didn't really get a lot of traction in its time, but 3 Cheers for Sweet Revenge really did. Really came onto the scene. Very strong statements made with this record. Heavy punk influences. This is in the heyday of the emo scene. These are really one of the pioneers of the whole emo genre. No doubt taking cues from bands like Queen and The Cure. This is as theatrical as emo music got back in the day. You could stack these guys right up there with The Used, who are also really heavily involved in the emo scene, the emo movement, so to speak. And there's dozens of other bands that kind of latched onto the same styles that My Chemical Romance and The Used implemented into their style. I personally always liked My Chemical Romance more just because of how good the musicians really were. Felt like a lot of those other bands were just based off of raw emotion, and My Chemical Romance on this record does have that, but you're talking about iconic emo drum riffs, iconic emo guitar riffs, dueling, harmonizing guitar solos. Thinking from a technical aspect of wow, how did they do that? There is such a craft of musicianship laced within this record that's undeniable, whether you like the band or not. There's no denying that this band is incredibly talented. Songwriting wise, we get into a lot of darker elements and a lot of really weird things, as time goes on. I think key tracks off of the record for me personally are probably Helena, which also is called So Long and Good Night, I'm Not Okay, I Promise, The Ghost of You. Now, I don't have time to really dive into every single member of the band and what they exactly did, but I think ones worth mentioning are Gerard Way, obviously the lead singer of the band, Frank Iero, who is one of the main key songwriters of the band, who has also gone on to do other projects in a similar vein. I think those were the 2 of the main powerhouses, along with Gerard Way's brother, Mikey Way. 2 or 3 of the main powerhouses that really helped My Chemical Romance kind of be what it needed to be. Not saying the other band members didn't contribute. It's pretty obvious who was the most vocal in the interviews that you can go back and watch yourself, like I did and like I have. The person who cares the most is probably going to be the one who's the voice of the band, and who is also going to resonate the most with fans whenever he is speaking on topics that the band has to deal with. The record itself it's a very emotional ride, very, very dark, ride. You have tracks like The Ghost of You and Cemetery Drive that kind of have a lingering darkness, which really makes you think what was going through these guys' heads whenever they were writing and recording this music. There is a live album composed of different times that the band recorded live. It's called Life on the Murder Scene, which is basically Three Cheers for Sweet Revenge, all of those songs, but live versions. So you compare those two records and you can really see how much production was involved. And I'm no fool. I know production can vastly change the vibe of the way a song will resonate with other people. And there's no doubt that there is a lot of production, but it doesn't take away from how good the musicians are. And when you do go listen back to those other live recordings, sometimes I have a hard time deciding which one I want to listen to because the live recordings are so good, but there is a crispness to the record that is just, it's hard to beat that. I'm going to say, you know, just to be fair with myself, this is not a perfect record by any means. There's not one happy song on this entire album. This is definitely I hate myself music, or I love emo music, and it's not something that I want to listen to all of the time, but for what it does and for what its purpose is, for what they were trying to accomplish, it does its job quite well. If you like theatric music and theatric songwriting styles, I'm pretty sure you would probably really like this album, especially if you like bands like The Cure, The Used, or even bands like Brand New. I feel like you could really appreciate what My Chemical Romance has to offer with this album, Three Cheers for Sweet Revenge. As far as the score goes, I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10, just because I think it's a great album. I think it's definitely one of my favorite albums of all time. To be a 10 out of 10, it has to be like nearly perfect. This is an album that I don't want to listen to all of the time, but it definitely is probably in like my top 20 of all time records of all time. But whenever I do listen to this album, I don't just listen to one song. I have to start it and finish it. That's how I listened to it back in the day, and it's an experience for me. So as always, I hope that you appreciated this video. I hope that I was able to explain myself and how I feel. As always, thank you for preparing yourself for a plethora of hot takes and potentially unpopular opinions. I'm Gabriel Fast. I will always be the wannabe critic.